Hello and welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly. The Security Weekly team is taking the week off, and we're sharing the rest of the executive interviews we recorded at RSAC Conference 2025 this year. For episode 409, we'll be sharing 6 of these pre-recorded interviews with you today. First, in segment 1, Chad Alessi, Managing Director of Cybersecurity at CTG, shares their comprehensive cybersecurity approach for middle market companies. Then Nick Carroll, Cyber Incident Response Manager from Nightwing, joins us to discuss how organizations can continue to build cyber resiliency to stay ahead of attackers. Next in segment 2, Chris Peluso, Head of LibreEsva for the Americas, discusses the opportunities generative AI represents for improving email security. Eyal Beneshti, CEO and founder of IronScales, discusses the evolution of phishing and how their email security product has evolved to keep up. Finally, in segment 3, Carl Vandenberg, Chief Marketing Officer for Illumio, discusses Illumio Insights, the company's cloud detection and response solution. And finally, Tony Anscombe, Chief Security Evangelist for ESET, shares the latest insights into the tools and tactics used by ransomware gangs. I hope you enjoy watching these executive interviews as much as we did making them. We'll see you next week.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1password.
Welcome back to the RSAC Conference 2025. We're still here recording live from Cyber's TV studio in beautiful Broadcast Alley at the Moscone West. I'm Doug White, and joining me for this interview is Chad Alessi. I wanted this interview because I wanted to talk to you about this, but Chad is the Managing Director of Cybersecurity for CTG, so that is really cool. Now, I really do, and I'm not just doing this because, I heard you had a lot of money you were going to pay me, but
that comes later.
I think of all the people I got to talk to this week, this was one of the things I had not heard. It was something that just immediately came up to me as personal, because I do get these calls all the time, and it was about middle market cybersecurity issues. And I was talking to you earlier. I saw this presentation a few weeks ago where my client who had asked me to help them with this was listening to a pitch, and the pitch just literally started with, now first we'll want to meet with your SOC team members and we'll work with that before we begin a wider implementation. And the guy's like, I'm the SOC team, I'm legal, I'm IT support, I'm everything. And so I think all those people are out there. This is a huge part of the industry. So what do you think are the biggest threats facing all those middle market companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it is one that we see continually over and over again with mid-market companies, where they just have one person who's trying to do everything, right? Everything, kind of a Swiss Army knife type of person who can kind of handle everything. And by the fact that they don't have the budgets or they don't have the money to even go and hire a full team to do it, it's just kind of like, well, Doug, you're it. So, good luck. Congratulations. Yeah, so we're trying to deal with it. But, the mid-market faces a lot of the same issues that some of the bigger guys were facing a few years back, but now the attackers have moved down to the mid-markets because they're easier targets.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is still the same things that we see as high priority. So, ransomware is a big issue. That can seriously put someone out of business pretty quickly. And so we've seen things like even small veterinarian offices being hit with ransomwares. We've seen small businesses being hit with ransomware, and they're going after their backups as well. So they're trying to delete those. So they really are just disabling them altogether.
And I think that's shifting a little bit from what you were talking about. They were the sort of the second wave. But I also think because supply chain
Yeah.
a lot of attackers are starting to realize that, well, this is defended like crazy.
Exactly. Yeah.
But those people that put the vending machines in the lobbies of the buildings that are connected to the networks have no defenses at all.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. And that is one that keeps a lot of the CISOs and CIOs up at night, right? Is to say third-party, attack vectors are really a big problem, and it's a risk that they're trying to deal with. So we're seeing and we're hearing from customers and clients in the mid-market that it's not necessarily the attacks are becoming more sophisticated. It's really that the attack surface has grown so quickly and so vastly that it's hard for them to keep up, right? Because they don't have the teams to be able to handle it, nor do they have the budgets to be able to go to
Absolutely.
do it.
And I mean, like I say, I get that all the time with people. I even had one that I was working for them as a contractor, and they called me and they said, we need to arrange a, say, like week where our legal and accounting teams will fly in to audit your organization. And I said, it's just me.
Yeah.
There's no legal team, there's no accounting team, there's none of that. And they're like, well, what?
Yeah.
And that, I think there's a lot of companies in that position, and they're not necessarily well marketed to by a lot of the players because that's just not their price point. And they're saying we're not really interested at below 10 million.
And a lot of the tools and controls today, right, are minimum $200,000, $250,000 just to get them into an enterprise type of environment. And it's just beyond the budgets they can afford.
We even saw that with police. Back when we were doing early forensics training, we would see forensics companies coming in and going, so we want to meet with your lab team separately from your like line team, and
we're all the same.
I'm the high-tech crimes officer. I've had no training other than they set a laptop on my desk. And it was just a little crazy.
Yeah, we see that a lot too. We've done some incident response planning right around that and trying to help with the resiliency. And we go, okay, well, we need to, get all the teams together. And they go, well, it's just one person, so we'll get that together for you. Right?
It should be quick.
It should be quick, right? So we're working with that individual to come up with a plan for them. And I think it's a matter of just setting your expectation when you go in and work with those mid-market companies to say these guys really need help, and we need to come in from their perspective, meet them where they want to be met, and that's what we try to do.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, is it just money and the dollars and all that keeps these middle market companies from being able to get into this space? And should they just be like, forget it? We might as well just say we're going to be able to do.
Yeah, no, I think budgets are a big thing, right?
Obviously.
Because you have to deal with it. You have to work through within their budgets and their means, but it's not the most important thing. And particularly for us, we try to help our clients understand it's really about visibility and prioritization, right? It's understanding what you have in your environment, what's your biggest risk you have there, really knowing what that is, and then trying to prioritize the amount of controls that you want to layer in and get the biggest bang for your buck. So looking at your security goals, matching that with your business strategy. And so what is the biggest risk if you lose a system? How can it impact the way you can actually generate revenue and make money? And then prioritizing those systems and being able to layer in those controls at the lowest cost you can to be able to be effective and do that, right? And you're really looking at, are we spending money for the sake of just this layers of defense? Are we actually prioritizing the highest risk and then mitigating that risk with some control that we can put in place, and really trying to measure that return on investment to say, okay, it makes sense for us to install a particular application because this is going to reduce the amount of risk we have today. But if it doesn't make sense and it doesn't align with your business strategy, what's the point? Right? Because if it doesn't reduce a risk, then you're just adding for the sake of adding.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the way controls get applied. And I mean, I did a lot of like compliance auditing and things like that. And when we were looking, and a lot of the compliance auditing we're doing was for a large company, but it was a large company that had bought small companies. And again, that was sort of awakening for me because I'm walking into a company where, again, we're going like, can you get your accounting team out here? I got my accountants ready to talk to them. And they're like, oh, I'm the whole thing.
Exactly.
I'm the whole bit of it. So now, so I'll tell you what I think, and you can tell me what the answer is.
Sure.
One of the first steps I usually talk about with this is understanding your data flows. Because to me, to understand your threat surface, you have to understand what you have. And a lot of times they don't. A lot of times it's like, well, we think there's a server here, and oh yeah, we had that thing set up in 2 years ago, and it may still be there. I mean, what are your like first steps, practical steps that people need to be moving if they're in this realm? I mean, they're not just able to go, okay, we'll get a bunch more money. And we'll go.
Yeah. We do that same exact thing. So we try to meet them where they're at, right, to understand where their greatest risk is. Mm-hmm. So for mid-market particularly, if you go in telling them, well, we need to do a formal risk assessment, their eyes will glaze over and they'll be like, yeah, that's not our process, right? So we have to go in and say, all right, well, let's start with doing a network analysis, understanding what those data flows are. Something simple. We're not going to put a scanner on your network and start scanning those things. Let's just grab some packets, do some analysis on those packets, understand what the origin and destination type of IPs are. How are these things communicating? What does your network segmentation look like? Do you have ability to actually quarantine or even triage an issue if it actually comes in? Setting them up for that resiliency discussion. Yep. And handling if you do in fact have a effect, because it's not when, it's if, right? And at this
because
point,
that's what you need to do. I mean, because I remember going to a place and one of the questions we would ask was, do you have a network diagram?
Yeah.
And the person said, very smug, said, yes, I do.
Yeah.
I said, could we see this network diagram? And he goes, yes, let me get that for you. And he goes over and he gets this paper,
right,
and puts it on the table. And I was looking at it, and I said, does that say IPX SPX right there? And he said, yes, it does. And I said, so you're running IPX SPX network? And he was like, I don't know what those letters mean. And I said, so what kind of network are you running? And he was like, just the usual kind. And so again, I immediately attached my sniffer and I'm going, okay, this is what's on this network. No, this is not IPX SPX. Okay, this is TCP IP. And he's like, oh yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so when was this diagram? And he flips it over and he goes, it's like 1989 or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who is this guy? Bill whatever. And he goes, oh yeah, I think he retired like 12 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was the last time this thing had been updated.
Right, yeah.
So getting that, I think,
exactly.
And then that data flow is right on the back end of that, right?
Exactly,
and I don't care what size you are. You need to understand these things because you can't understand your threat surface until you understand what is being threatened.
Yeah, and that's how we find shadow IT, right? And we get these things and new applications that have been added that were 5-10 years ago, or even when Bob or Jim were there that wrote it back in '86. Oh yeah, they added that. We're not quite sure why we added that, but it's still there. And it's still laying dormant. We haven't done an upgrade on it. We haven't done a patch on it.
Could still be IPXS.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't know what you have, like you said, until you go into it. So
I saw one once where they had we were scanning network. We saw a bunch of weird stuff. I was like, "Do you have any idea what this is?" So we grabbed the packets, and they were unencrypted. We were just looking at them, and I'm like, "I think this is EBCDIC."
Wow.
And it was literally like encapsulated EBCDIC traffic, and it was an AS400. And I said, where's the AS400? We did a full walkthrough. I didn't see any AS400. This is a bigger company, but it wasn't a huge company. And they were like, we used to have that. And I'm like, well, you apparently still do.
Still do, yeah.
Turned out it was in this person's house.
Wow.
And that person had it in their basement, had agreed to take it when they were right-sized out of a job, and said, I just love it so much, I'm going to support it. And they had all this customer data on there and just crazy stuff. Yeah, it was insane. I mean, so I guess another part of this question would be, how do we get to be more proactive at this in this space? Because it's very easy to talk to a very, multi-billion-dollar company about this, but it's a lot harder when you're talking to a regional chain of car dealerships that have just as much of a threat surface as that multi-billion-dollar company. Yeah,
it's a good question, and one that we get a lot. And they're always concerned that, I need this huge enterprise budget to be able to be proactive because we just don't have the budget to do it. What we try to tell clients is you don't have to have a huge budget. You just need to have good practices in place, right, to go and do that. So it's much like us going to the doctor and getting a checkup. You have to do those checkups periodically to understand whether or not you have a 90% blockage in your heart, right? You don't know it until you get a problem or something happens, and hopefully it's not a catastrophic heart attack. You're going and getting those regular updates and checkups. So doing the simple blocking and tackling, trying to understand, do you have policies and procedures in place to handle an event? If you in fact have that event, how do you actually go in and see if you do have things on your network that you didn't know you had, right? Trying to get that visibility like we talked about earlier. If you don't have visibility, you can't control or you can't protect what you don't know you don't have, right? And so understanding that, and that doesn't take a huge budget to do, right? You can do that. And then moving from that proactiveness and moving into that proactiveness, it's really going through, and the same thing that you mentioned. Look, 86 is the last time we updated our network drawing. Well, we need to do that regularly. We need to do that updating periodically. And so it's the same way as we go for a regular checkup to our doctor, we need to do that periodically on our cybersecurity controls, looking at our network, looking at the assets we have in our environment. If we've decided we're going to acquire another regional, either car wash or another car dealership, then we're adding new assets to our company. We need to go evaluate those and make sure that we're keeping that control in place.
And I have one other word to add to that, which is commitment.
Yeah, I like that.
One of the things you see, and we all know this, and you know this, is that we'll do that soon.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things I see for middle market companies is to actually commit.
Yeah.
Not just, Ted will get to it when he gets to it, but he also needs to go put that and then all the wiring in that other dealership we just started. You've got to find a way to put those people committed to these tasks and make them the same priority as everything else instead of letting them be this we'll do it someday. Yeah. That's why the network diagram's from 86.
And that's another great one, because that prioritization, right, becomes a big issue. We see that a lot too, where we go in and we start asking questions about a particular asset or something that they purchased or maybe they put in. And we go, hey, do you have this particular control around it? I mean, something as simple as like MFA or something like that they wanted to try to roll out. They go, we're going to do that. We've got that on the budget. We're going to do it in 2 years from now or 3 years from now. And so that's a risk that they're just sitting out there going, we'll do it. Yeah. We're committed to do it, but it's just not as a higher priority right now for us. Right. We're going to do other things, right?
And so your big role is then providing solutions to try to help. And obviously you understand the plight of these, these companies. So, I mean, is that the main role that you guys pursue?
We do, yeah. So our goal is really not just to come in and sell you a tool or a product, right, or a control, and then try to get an implementation cost on top of that. And it's really that stacking of the rates in there, so we're making a bunch of money off of you as a company, and you don't give any value out of it.
Right.
What we try to do is come in and really build that resiliency. Right, today. And so we help those clients with the things like you talked about. How do you be more proactive around your cybersecurity? How do you handle the small budget that you might have and the small limited team that you might have in there to actually be able to implement these things? Yep. And then building that resiliency around it. And how do we respond to an event if it happens, right? Because it is going to happen, right? And we're going to be able to have to deal with it either way. Either we catch it early because we have a control in place that can actually do that.
Yep.
So then now we knew that we use that as some early learning opportunities for us. And then we try to build that into that resiliency, like you said, to become more proactive and make that cybersecurity proactive.
Yeah. And I would also say test it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's another thing people neglect. And one of the things we used to do when we did DRP.
Yeah.
I know it's not called that anymore, but I would walk in and I would go like, okay, your entire dev team went to lunch and they never came back. Don't worry about what happened to them, but they're not coming back. Let's just say they're not coming back. Who do you call first? And you would get CIOs going, I call Steve, and you go, okay, call Steve on your phone right now. I'm like, oh no, no, call him right now. I want you to call him.
Yeah.
And they're like, does anybody know Steve's number? Anybody?
They don't know it. Yeah.
And they're like, Steve retired, and they're like, okay, who do you call now? Yeah. And sometimes you get two names. And then it all peters out. So you do have to test.
Well, absolutely. And so I love that scenario because that is one of the first things we do when we grab someone's DR plan or DRP, as you say. We go right to the contact list. How old is that contact list? And when you look at that contact list, and if it's old and stale and people are on there that haven't even been there in 10, 20 years or even 5 years, you know that the DR plan is
I used to ask CEOs to show me their contacts on their phone. I'm like, I want to see it. Show me the numbers, and I'm going to dial one of them. Just like, is the CISO in there? Is legal in there? And they're like, oh no, Marjorie handles all that. I'm like, hey, Marjorie didn't come back from the airport yesterday. We don't know where she is.
Right.
What do you do? And they're like, okay, I'd be helpless at that. I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chad. To find out more about CTG, please visit securityweekly.com/CTGRSAC. And thanks, Chad, for joining us today.
Appreciate
it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. I will be back shortly with more content here, in fact, really shortly, at RSAC 2025 conference.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control and every executable in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind by visiting securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today.
Welcome back to RSAC Conference 2025. We're recording live from the Cyber Risk TV studio in Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. It's getting a little full out here. Final keynotes coming up. I'm your host, Matt Alderman, and joining me for this last interview segment of RSA Conference 2025 is Nick Carroll, Cyber Incident Response Manager at Nightwing. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you and welcome. This is it's really nice to see you guys. It's been an amazing conference. I get to be the wrap up for you, which is fun, but it's been great actually getting to see everyone and see the sights of San Francisco, but really just to get to connect with everyone in this field again. So nice.
Yeah, I always get together with my friends this time of year. It's been a year since the spin out of Nightwing from Raytheon. What's that last year look like for you guys?
It has been an amazing year. I mean, it has been a lot of work. It's been a lot of work for all of the teams. We're having to do this startup on really just an amplified schedule to make sure that we can break away and become our own entity and truly be what we can be and take our mission forward and really drive it in ways that are exciting and new. But we've got this startup energy going, but at the same time, we're carrying with us, 40 years of combined experience across the entire company. So it's this amazing blend of startup culture with actual experience and capability to continue to deliver on really critical missions.
So what's like the key kind of focus areas for Nightwing, right? When you look at the cybersecurity space, it's broad, right? Kind of where's your niche? Where do you guys really focus your capabilities into the market?
So Nightwing is really focused on national security, cybersecurity operations, working with DoD, the intelligence community, things like that, doing all kinds of different, operations to support them, whether it be doing offensive or defensive work to help them with testing things and learning out how different things work, but then also applying that across the commercial space. One of the things that a lot of people tend to forget is that critical infrastructure is very important for national security, but a lot of that critical infrastructure isn't owned by the Fed or owned by state and local government. It's owned by corporations, right? It's owned by these corporate partners that are assisting in making sure that we get food and energy and transportation to our homes. And so we're able to do not just the actual intelligence community work and this really deep research and really high-end, cyber capabilities for our federal partners, but we're able to take that and apply it to support critical infrastructure across the country.
Yeah, I mean, critical infrastructures, healthcare, energy, even the financial systems, right?
Yes.
Those are all commercial entities, right? And yes, the government drives some stuff there, and CISA's done a really good job of bringing stuff in capabilities to light, but they're owned by private companies. Right? And so how do those companies deal with it? And what I see in my career, you have different levels of maturity across those industry sets.
Absolutely.
Right? Financials have been regulated for a long time, so they're more mature typically on average. Healthcare, not as much. And then you move into energy sectors, and various energy sectors, they all vary, right? And so they need help, I think, really helping them bolster up their capabilities and protect our national infrastructure, right?
Yeah. Very, very much so. The levels of maturity does vary a lot. We've got industries that have been regulated for a long time, like finance and healthcare. And so when we assist clients in that space and we're working to do, cyber defense with them, we tend to do a lot more stuff that is higher on the maturity scale for, helping them close really advanced systems up. Working on doing pen testing with them, working on doing proactive threat hunting. Yeah. And that's different from, say, if we were working with a smaller local government, like municipality kind of thing, where they're doing, stormwater or something, right? The maturity isn't really there where they need, like, I need a pen test every year to find out the new holes that I haven't closed yet. You can go in and be like, hey, let's start with the basics, the cyber hygiene, let's get you squared away, and let's get you resilient so that you can actually be, a proper member of a defended national security posture.
Yeah. So you talked about cyber hygiene. It's one of those foundational issues. Where's the biggest gap you see in the practice around gaps in cyber hygiene?
I wish I could say that everybody had the best cyber hygiene already, because we've been talking about it for years now,
Right.
and it's a solved problem. But the reality is that we support clients in Fed side, in state and local government, and in commercial side, where we're still seeing a lot of gaps and misses in things like MFA adoption, right?
Right.
So a lot of the threat actors that my team has to respond to and deal with, they really like that edge networking technology for VPNs and your cloud infrastructure and stuff, because it's a really easy entry point for them. And we're still seeing a lot of, shared credentials or passwords that never expire, or even just, zero MFA on those kinds of solutions, or minimal patching on VPN systems, where it's like you're not patching the edge devices. Everybody has moved to a point now where you have to have EDR. You have to have, this endpoint piece, and you've consolidated this really strong internal security piece. But a lot of our edges, there's no EDR for a lot of firewalls, like that, right? There's no EDR for VPN appliances. So you wind up having to really focus down on doing proper hygiene basics with MFA, strong passwords, strong patching policies for those edge pieces to actually lock things down and make sure you're not allowing people to slip through.
And it's not just MFA, it's phishing resistant MFA now, right? Because
Absolutely.
we've seen so much with these MFA attacks that it's not just implementing MFA for the sake of MFA, it's deploying the right MFA as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's a big thing now. It's always this cat and mouse game with security where it's like we do something and the attackers come up with their answer and we come up with an answer.
Right.
And we're seeing that start to happen with the phishing now, where they're phishing for MFA backup codes, they're phishing for device activation codes, they're phishing for the pieces that allow them to bypass the MFA.
Right.
And if our users aren't trained how to spot this new wave of phishing, they could fall for it and they could accidentally compromise the MFA system itself.
Yeah, those are those foundational elements that slow us down. Let's talk about cyber resilience for a second, because it's something that's been in the news a lot. What do you have to do to prepare yourselves to be more cyber resilient? Because it's not necessarily the same, right? There's some nuances to what you implement that also help protect you, but cyber resilience more than that. It's how to make the business resilient, and if there is an attack, how to recover fast. So what are those other things that people have to think about under a cyber resilience kind of program?
So that's a really big thing now, is that you have to begin to incorporate other teams outside of your SOC and outside of your traditional cyber team. You have to bring in IT, you have to bring in human resources, legal, communications. They have to understand their business operations, how their business operations interconnect to everybody else, and what it takes to rebuild and move on if the worst happens. But really, we're starting to get to a point now where it's not just enough to say you have to be resilient. Because when you think of resiliency, you're traditionally thinking about recovery, or
is it business? So let me ask this question real fast while you're answering that. Is cyber resiliency just business continuity and disaster recovery 2.0, or is it more than that?
I think it has to be more than that.
Okay.
We have to be adopting proactive cyber policies and proactive cyber, defenses into your resiliency program. Because if you look at recovering from a ransomware attack, it's great that you can recover, but you were still down for 2 weeks while it happened and business stopped. And you can't have that if you're like a healthcare provider, right? You cannot fall back to paper records or turn people away all the time, because you're actually impacting patient care. So you have to be able to say, yes, not only do we have the ability to recover, and we've tested and we've got the policies for these things, but that we're actually implementing something like proactive threat hunting, that we're implementing true vulnerability management, that we're getting ahead of these things that could push us into a position where we have to fall back.
Yeah. How important is tabletop exercises in your cyber resiliency program?
They're still very important. I know people are saying it's not as exciting, or it's the thing that you've been doing for a while, but it's still something you need to do. It's still something that allows you to really test stuff. But the way to do it now and to make it proper and to get the best value out of it is, like I mentioned with resiliency, going beyond your SOC team or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with your tabletop, If you're not bringing in your communications team, your HR team, your legal team, so they understand hey, this is what we have to do. And that we've tested those communications path flows. We've tested, the handoffs. We've tested those pieces so that we can say, yes, we can do this quickly and get back to business over the entire entity. then you're not really doing yourself a favor by doing the tabletop if you're just doing like one tiny piece of your whole entity.
Well, I'll give you an example. When we did our first tabletop in my day job, it was a ransomware attack, but it was focused on a SaaS-based application. And the first question we had to figure out is, well, who's our contact at SaaS company XYZ? Because we don't know if it's their problem or if it's our problem or what happened, right? And when you look across the business and look at all the different things that are in the environment, you realize that you have these dependencies that you don't think about initially. And the only way to truly test them sometimes is to actually go through the exercise and go, all right, who's got this company's contact information? It opens your eyes in a different way.
It really does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so the other part of your practice is threat hunting.
Yes.
How does threat hunting tie into this? I mean, I know the basics, but is it to test your resiliency? Is it to test your cyber hygiene? Is it a combination of both? How should people think about leveraging threat hunting in their program?
So it's a little A and a little B, right? The reality is, like I mentioned, you have to be proactive nowadays in your resiliency. You have to be proactive in your entire approach that you're taking. And so if you can say like, hey, we're going to do a tabletop and we're tabletopping based on this ransomware group because we know this ransomware group, really likes our industry vertical. They really like to hit healthcare providers. They really like to hit, finance or whatever, right? So we're going to look at their tactics and techniques, and we're going to see if we can recover from them. Well, you can take that same thing and apply it to threat hunting, where you can say, okay, I know this ransomware group really likes healthcare, and I'm a healthcare entity, and I know that they use this tactic and this technique, and they use this tool. So let's go in and let's say formulate our hypothesis for a hunt, go in and test our tool sets and test our logs and see like, could I catch that if it came into my environment? Could I see if you deployed that tool? Or could I see if you were doing that lateral movement in that way? And really making sure it's like, okay, if I have it, great. And if I don't, then we can go, all right, what do I need to get there? Do I need better visibility? Do I need to tie into different systems? Do I need to talk to Bob in accounting to make sure that his system ties into everything else? And we bring all these pieces together so that you have that visibility across everything so that you can build proper alerts and get your team ahead of it so you don't wind up being behind it when they eventually come knocking.
Yeah, and when you find gaps, go close the gaps.
Oh, please,
right?
yes.
Please, right? If you're going to do the exercise, at least take the lessons from that exercise and close those gaps for the next time.
Absolutely. We work with a bunch of clients on things a lot, and we take them, findings on vulnerability assessments or penetration tests, or even in threat hunting, where where we have this gap, or hey, just so you know, this vulnerability is being exploited in this firewall system, and I know you guys have that. Please patch this right away. And then they kind of put it on the back burner of like, we'll get to it. And then sometimes it comes to be push comes to shove, and it's like, okay, well now we're having an incident and we're having to deal with these things together. And when you go back to that root cause analysis, you dial it back and you go like, hey, remember that thing I told you about 2 months ago that you really should patch and address? Turns out that was the avenue they took to get in.
Right.
So please, let's be proactive, and let's not just say we found a gap. Let's actually close it.
Let's close the gap.
Yes.
Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. If you want to learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/Nightwing RSAC. Again, Nick, thank you so much for joining us on Security Weekly.
Thank you. It's been great.
All right, folks, now we're going to do the live wrap up. Just stay tight. We're going to end this conference on a fun note.
This episode is sponsored by Fastly, the application security leader and edge cloud platform behind many top digital experiences. Fastly helps organizations deliver and secure online experiences for their end users through a modern, developer-friendly approach to security. With their next-gen WAF, bot management, and DDoS protections, teams have the tools they need to ensure their applications and APIs perform at their best without sacrificing speed or reliability. Discover how Fastly transforms security into an enabler for digital innovation at securityweekly.com/Fastly.
Welcome to RSAC Conference 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRisk TV studio in Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and joining me for this interview is Chris Peluso, head of Libra ESVA Americas. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So first, I've come across a lot of different company names, Libra ESVA. Help me out. What's a fun background about this? That's a pretty unique one.
Yeah, there is a lot of history around that, and thank you for pronouncing it correctly, Libra ESVA. We end up spending a couple minutes in the beginning of a conversation kind of doing some history around that. The company was originally called Libra, and when it was founded a while ago, and the first product was actually ESVA. Email Security Virtual Appliance is what it stands for.
Okay.
And then at some point, we decided that we were going to put those two together, and the full name was born, Libra ESVA. And we've been going at it, for over 10 years worldwide with Libra ESVA.
That's awesome. And now you've got, speaking of products, you've got more products helping the new world of AI, Gen AI, and all that implies. And the setup here is that I think the conversation is more about you've seen Gen AI used by the bad actors, I'll just say. What does that look like, especially from the email perspective, email security perspective that you're seeing?
Yeah, since we've been in this for quite a while now, we've seen the evolution of threats and what phishing was over 10 years ago to what it's become today. Gen AI has played a large role in the evolution and the success of it more recently. And so, AI has been there in different forms for a very long time, and this is the current iteration of it, right? And so, yeah, Gen AI has done a couple things to make threats more accessible to more attackers. And the underlying theme of that is that they're making threats much more personalized. So Gen AI is making it so that an attacker can impersonate the CEO of a company over a voicemail, or impersonate a vendor you've been working with for a long time over email, choosing your name, your title, everything that's personal about you. So when you either pick up the phone or, in our case, receive an email, it's talking directly to you. It appears to be coming from the person you've been speaking with or the company you've been working with. Everything is written very naturally. Even though this might be originating from a non-native English country, it sounds very normal. And Gen AI has been behind that to make it very targeted and very, very natural.
Yeah, it's definitely much different than, please don't click on this link because it looks suspicious. Now it's more of, who am I actually talking to? We're here live, so I know this is actually Chris, but it could be the voice of someone else.
Well, that's the crazy thing. Yes, this is live, but Gen AI has led to videos, which if this was a video on YouTube, you can doubt if that was really the two people that you thought you were listening to. And so, yeah, Gen AI has just completely changed it's completely revolutionized the way attackers are targeting their victims.
And if there's been an evolution, a revolution there, we're still using email. So we still have these creaky old technologies. Everybody uses it. So what does that look like from the email perspective? Do we still need to, because I'll go back to the idea of clicking on a link. There's a lot of different ways we can make clicking on a link safer. Should I be thinking of something else beyond that? It's more than just links.
Yeah, links play a big role in phishing attacks today, but so do attachments, so do, the emails lead to other methods of communication. And so, yeah, we're using now, Gen AI, or we're not using Gen AI, but again, Gen AI is being used to, make this accessible, the attacking more accessible, more realistic again. And yeah, we've, on the flip side, needed to build our own AI in order to combat this effectively.
Yeah, and so I'm curious about that because on the one hand, you already set it up that AIs can be deep fake, et cetera. They'll probably, maybe they could even just swap our voices in this entire interview. Who knows what's going to happen? But part of that too, hopefully, there's a promise that AI can also then be better about identifying that inauthenticity, if I can get that word out, or just being able to say, this looks like an anomaly. And we've had machine learning that points out anomalies for a long time, right? You mentioned there's different types of AIs. What are you using? How are you using AI for good now, for helping email security?
Yeah, well, again, when email security just got started, it was very much rule-based, which has its place still today. But yeah, the evolution of the rules have become, algorithms into today's AI. And AI is a term that's thrown around very loosely today.
Fair,
Yes.
yes.
And so, you can't necessarily fight, you can't just say, I'm just going to use AI and fight email threats. You actually have to build a, purpose-built solution that is efficient, effective, and easily trained. And so, we've been working on our own AI engine, which we call semantic AI, to target exactly these type of threats that are coming in. And, we can't use, I think there's a distinction between generative AI, which is, what you see today with the popular AI engines around. And then what we've built is something called discriminative AI, which is, again, a purpose-built engine specifically designed to identify and classify different types of email, whether it's a threat or it's safe. In the end, we want to know good or bad.
Yeah.
There are some sub classifications of that, but in the end, our discriminative AI is able to get to that result.
And that feels what's more helpful from the defender's perspective, because as you were saying, I was focusing on that. Here, click on this link is the form of phishing, but attachments or that voicemail of a partner that you've been working with, or the email that has an attachment that, oh, here's a bill and we've been working with this company. I just haven't been paying attention to where this email came from.
Yeah.
Those are important nuances of different types of bad.
Yeah, and they're all, there is no kind of single tool to block all types of threats. Right. AI is a tool. It's not the end-all solution to email security. It's one of the tools that you have in the bag when something has gotten past maybe some of the rules, maybe some of the virus checks. It's gotten past a URL sandbox. Then you have other tools, and AI, our discriminative AI or semantic AI engine, is there as a tool which helps us classify the email as good or bad. And so yes, this is, whether it's URLs, content, our semantic AI engine, regardless of language, regardless of source, regardless of destination, or who's appears to be coming from, what's really unique and interesting about our semantic AI is that we're looking at message intent. So it doesn't matter if somebody has, written something incorrectly. It doesn't matter if they've, the language is either, English, Italian, French, or any other, language. It's not about that. It's about what's the intent? What are the semantics? What is the tone of the email? And then we understand what it's trying to do. And based on that, we can make a decision if it's actually, good, or what it's, intending, what it says it's trying to do, or trying to do something else.
I like that, because for me, part of my complaints against, I'll just say naive security, is the security awareness training that's, if it's missing a comma or has that bad grammar, it's probably bad, which, okay, fine. But if we're just relying on a missing semicolon or periods, that feels like a very creaky type of security control, because it's the intent. And a lot of these attacks have pressure, like, I need to get your response immediately, or, we have 10 minutes to make this decision. That pressure suddenly is like, oh, I just need to act. And it might throw away, it's taking advantage of that human aspect to try to be helpful. So I'm curious too, in the sense of, let's call it a time dimension, how easy it is to roll out, a Libre ESFA and have this extra protection on your email. Do I have to wait for all this training to figure out what the anomalies are? Is it turned on and things are good? Tell us a little bit about what that story looks like.
Yeah, so we've trained semantic AI with our own samples that have either been collected by ourselves or have been submitted to us by our clients. And what we've built, which is unique about it is a small language model, which is different from what you typically hear about, which is a large language model, an LLM, which is used by generative AI engines. And what the small language model allows us to do is to deploy it on the edge. So we can, the users of semantic AI, they don't have to worry about their data being exfiltrated. They don't have to worry about their data being passed back to Libre ESFA. They don't have to worry about data leaving their environment. It all happens locally. It's very lightweight. And it's because we use an SLM, or we've developed an SLM, which is hyper-focused on email security. When you're looking for threats, you don't need to worry about, how to build an extension to your house, right? Which is what, an LLM does. It knows everything about everything. But the SLM can be super focused, very lightweight, and run locally so that data stays local. It understands the intent of the email in under a second, so email can be delivered safely, very quickly, or also equally quickly held back and not allowed to the user. And obviously things change. We need to sometimes update or train our semantic AI, and training can happen within hours. And after that, we're able to push updates globally within minutes. So it's very agile, very fast, and very effective at determining.
Yeah, that's a very good list, because in a different conversation I had this earlier, I was also, again, one of my go-to points is you never want your security tool to increase your attack surface. And with LLMs, I'll just use that for a minute, the L, a lot of people are concerned about, what's my data, where is it going, where is it leaking, is it exfiltrating, how many CPU or GPUs do I need to be running just to run this model myself? And email obviously is going to be very sensitive, internal email. So this is really nice to be able to hear that it's an SLM, run on the edge, the attack surface hasn't increased. And that hopefully, I think, is much more appealing to the security teams that are trying to figure out, is this going to help us actually or hurt us?
Exactly. We're not just with semantic AI, but Libra ESVA as a company, we're extremely focused on security, obviously, but also privacy. We hold data that is our customers' data, not ours to do anything with.
Yes.
And so we make sure that all their data is theirs. It's not leaving their environment. We do as much as possible to make sure that, they understand the steps we're taking to secure their data. And they've been very receptive to it. And the semantic AI falls right in line, privacy first, everything on the edge, everything local. Libra ESVA does not see the data. It does not get pushed to us. And so it falls in line with, where we stand as a company.
And I'm going to guess too, that you don't need to be better by training on everybody's emails. You're getting better by training on those attacks, what those look like. And those are the ones that are less likely to be sensitive, et cetera. But you have that growth by the breadth of view, as I'm going to guess, so you can have that better training for those SLMs.
Yeah, so we're also using, AI internally to help triage, reported emails. So obviously we do receive reported emails from our clients saying, hey, can you take a look at this? Can you take a look at that? And we receive, tens of thousands of emails, and it's just impossible for somebody to efficiently go through them effectively. And we've also been using, in this regard, generative AI to help triage, because it's able to process all those emails and better understand, and then we use that as necessary to help train our semantic AI. We're kind of using it all around, to help our analysts with going through the emails as effectively as possible, and take those learnings to train our semantic AI quickly and push the updates again very quickly.
Now, and as you said, you can push those updates, retrain in a matter of hours. So I was going to ask what the future looks like, and maybe not necessarily the next couple of hours, but just the couple of months or next year perhaps look like for how you're looking to evolve this tool.
Yeah, well, we just launched semantic AI, so that was a big announcement for us this week. I think we just need to let it be out there for a little while. Obviously, we're going to get a lot of feedback from our customers. We're very excited about it. It's one of the biggest new capabilities of the solution for a while. And so, to be honest, at this point, we just want to get feedback. It's going to be a little while. We want to take advantage of all the learnings and continue to tweak it, and make sure it's as continues to be as lightweight and efficient as possible, but obviously as effective as possible. And then, we'll see the next 6 months.
We'll see.
A lot can change, in 6 months. That's who knows what's going to happen.
That's true. But if my experience holds true, people like to give feedback. People like to send in emails. So hopefully.
We have vocal clients.
Well, you've been very vocal with us today. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
I want to thank everyone else for joining us. To find out more about Libra ESVA, please visit securityweekly.com/Libra ESVA RSAC. For all RSAC 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. Thanks again, Chris. And stick around. We're going to be back after the break with a quick wrap up from today at RSAC Conference 2025.
And here we are back at the RSAC Conference 2025. We're recording live here on CyberRisk TV and Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. It only took me like 3 days to figure out west, east, north, and south. And then I learned I don't think there's an east. But, you know, it was crazy. Yesterday we had all kinds of crazy traffic and things, but it's lots of fun. And today joining me for an interview is Ayal Beneshti. Got it. Who's the CEO and founder, not just the CEO, but the founder, and I always like to talk to founders of Iron Scales, which is a really cool company, and the master of email security everywhere. Hi, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm okay. I mean, it's this conference is, you know, it's a long conference, and we've been here for 4 straight days. But yeah, we're going, and it's a lot of fun. I was really excited to see you coming in because this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because I love scams. I report on scams all the time, and I think scams are a horrible blight because they don't just affect, you know, one thing or the other. They affect everybody from your grandmother to your family. And some people in enterprise say, well, I don't care about that. But I'm like, no, you do, because if your family members are getting extorted, they may turn that around on you. And I mean, phishing's been around. You and I were just talking about some historical thing. Phishing's been around as long as that history's been around, whether it was chain letters or you won the Spanish lottery. I remember when I was a kid, people getting hand-typed letters saying you've won the Spanish lottery. If you just, you write this check and send it here, we'll send you all your winnings. And all that stuff has evolved into basic modern phishing, right?
Yeah.
And then you were talking about phishing 2.0. So this was the expansion, and I almost got hit with one of those. Normally I'm pretty immune. I mean, I know I'm not immune. I didn't say that, but I almost got it. It had my daughter's name. It had my daughter's school. It said my daughter needed a signature, or she was going to be left at school when a trip started, and they needed it immediately because the bus was waiting, and if not, I needed to come and pick her up within 15 minutes. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to handle this. And then I went, why would they contact me? They would contact my wife. And I was like, whoa, and I put it on my sandbox, now, so you were getting to phishing 3.0, right? So tell us what is phishing 3.0?
Which is, for most part, some of the things that you've just described. You call it 2.0, but this is what we're going to see more and more in 3.0 as well. And the only thing that can make the distinction if it's 2 or 3, it's a question of who's behind this attack. If it's an agent, an AI, it's 3. If it's a human being, it's probably 2. But just to kind of maybe put things in context, phishing 2.0 was kind of the point in time that we realized that threat actors are moving away from phishing 1.0, which is all about the bad links, the bad attachments, emails with typos, the Nigerian scams, right, and all these kind of things. I really started to target organizations and employees in a much more sophisticated way, which is more fraud and scam than trying to install.
Like that customization stuff started with your phishing 2.0 of being able to embed very specific things, like putting your name in an email to me 15 minutes after this is over makes that a much more effective lure.
Yeah, so it's much more targeted. It's not necessarily about kind of trying to compromise your endpoint. It's about to lure you or try to make you do something that you're not supposed to do, like sign on this letter for your daughter, or wire money to the wrong bank account, or pay a fake invoice and stuff like that.
I mean, I responded to quite a few of those kind of scams, and I've actually consulted with some companies about how do you control, and I know this is not really your topic, but because it's so relevant, how do you control that trust relationship of just changing these account numbers, because I did 2 different companies where they had lost quite a bit of money simply, and one of them was just straight up off of an email. I mean, they emailed and the only thing, I looked at the email for them, and the only thing that was legitimate in this email was the name of the president of the company. And I'm like, anyone could do that. That's not clever. That's just, I did a web search and found out that you're the CEO of Iron Scales. Okay, I can send out an email with your name on it all day long. And this employee just did not have the channel, and we were setting up sort of what I called the double key system, where, okay, anything over, because I just asked, what do you want to lose? What are you comfortable with? You lose 10,000, 100,000, million? I don't know. You tell me. And anything over that, you're just going to need to put this double key system so they can't just go in and change an account.
It's a good example because the threat act, the cyber criminals, they know it. And this is exactly what they're trying to do now. They're trying to hack the process. Okay. They know that business processes are flawed and they're looking for loopholes, and they know that every company probably has this kind of threshold, and they're just trying to fly beneath the radar and find this kind of amount that will probably approved without the second key. Okay,
right.
So, and this is something that we see a lot with phishing 2.0. They have a very good understanding of how the business is operating. They know who to target. They know who the mail should come from. To your point, that should come from the president or the CEO or the CFO. They are highly contextualized. So very, very hard to.
And that works. I mean, the more contextualized it is, the more likely it is to work, because I saw my daughter's school name, the headmaster of the daughter's school, and you're going, okay, this is probably legitimate. But even then, I was like, I don't know.
$10 billion in 7 years, I think it means it says a lot.
It's a huge industry. Yeah. I mean, they have customer support. They've got tech support for their products and all this kind of stuff going on. So one of the things that you were then bringing up is this phishing 3.0, which has it's obviously the same elements, but now we've added a whole new dimension to it to make it even worse. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So to your point, they're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to scam us. They're trying to scam organizations and employees. What's makes phishing 3.0 very interesting is that if with phishing 1.0 and 2.0, it was all about text. Okay, yeah. It's an email, maybe it's a text message. Now with generative AI and all the great technology that we are seeing coming out there, they are now able to introduce new modalities. So imagine not just receiving this email from your daughter's schools, but the principal or her teacher is now calling you on your phone, and it sounds exactly like her. Okay, and if you're in a business environment, now imagine one of the executives jumping on a Teams call or a Zoom call with you and repeating basically what he just asked in an email, a text, or a voicemail. So we are in phishing 3.0, we are basically stepping into a multi-modality, multi-step type of scams and frauds that we call phishing 3.0. It's becoming that text surface kind of is changing in a very significant way, and the level of sophistication and the persistency.
Have you seen any? I was just thinking just now when you were saying that, I was like, have you seen any cases where they were sort of coordinating? Like an email comes in that says, hey, this is from Bob, and then you get a phone call like, did you get my email? This is the president. Like, have you handled this yet?
It's a great question, because for some people they think that it's the future, that we are talking about the future, and the answer is no. It's happening.
It's happening now.
Right now, and there were dozens of stories. It's starting in Asia. We're seeing a lot of cases in Hong Kong and these areas of the world. But last week we've seen a case in Israel, my homeland, where a company lost $3 million to a phishing 3.0 attack, where the attackers were taking all the steps from texting, voicemailing, and jumping on a Teams meeting, and the victim was 100% sure that they are speaking with the CFO of the company.
Yeah, I did one.
So it's happening right now. And,
I did. There was no email in this one. It was just a phone call to a person at night, and they were all remote employees. It was a phone call. It was from the CFO. They basically, said, hi, we have an emergency. And it was assuming I would have done an old pen test where,
So the short answer to your question is yes, it's happening right now. It's multi-step, it's multi-modal, and it's super easy because all this great technology is now open source and is fully available for everyone, including cybercrime organization. 2 days ago, I saw that there is a new kit on the dark web that is offering phishing 3.0 or Gen AI type of phishing kits to people to buy and deploy and make money.
And you just pay them a monthly fee, and they provide you with all that. And they're even doing the deep fakes and providing the LLMs to build the deep fakes, because you could get video, now. So you can get a video call from, the president of your company. I'm going, well, that is him. or her or whatever, and you're going, what do I do here?
And it's all happening as a service, and it's super easy to do that. Like, we're putting ourselves out there on social media, like it can be a LinkedIn or any other place. It's very easy to kind of grab a good picture of ours, and from a picture you can easily generate a video, and we now have demo tools to show how it can be done. And if you have your voice out there, it's it's ridiculously easy to clone it and use it.
I mean, I have no authority to do anything, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, so you think there's enough content from me? And he was like, oh, there's so much content from you that we could deep fake your whole life. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, because I have thousands of hours of videos sitting out there on the web that anybody can access and probably has, and not, but in this case, there's nothing for good.
And by the way, if they don't, and we are seeing it happening with some of our customers, they will make some phone calls to these executives, and they will just trying to make them say something so they can record their voice. So if they're missing, they will go and harvest voices.
Yeah.
It's voice harvesting type of attacks. Again, finding an image is much easier because we all put our image, pictures on LinkedIn and other kind of social media.
I like that, don't like that, but I like that idea that you call them and you ask them some questions. It's completely harmless, maybe. Exactly. I mean, and you're able to capture. This is sort of like the old 70s kind of recording and splicing the tapes together to get as in the movie Sneakers or something like that. So let's get to your main products. Now, I set up a lot of devices back over the years for people that were doing signature detection. They're looking at specific emails, they're looking at specific IP addresses, they're looking at very static, even to the point of saying anything that comes in with a Word file attached to it, it's blocked. But that's not going to beat all this stuff. So how that you said that was failing. How do we get to your product? What does it do? Do you tell me about how you're solving this problem?
So what we're doing basically is we say that, hey, if you really want to protect the user, you need to know the user. So we are attaching ourselves to people kind of, with Phishing 2.0, we're attaching to the people's inboxes, and we are really learning their behavior. We're really learning who they're communicating with, what trusted communication look like, what things are being discussed. And then we're using a very sophisticated anomaly detection models and natural language processing to extract context and the likes in order to be able to say, hey, maybe this email is not malicious by content. Maybe the link, if there is a link, maybe the link looks fine, or the attachment or whatever. But what is being said on this email and where the email comes from, this doesn't kind of seems like something that we can trust based on previous communication. And by moving away from just chasing known threats, which is like a rear view mirror, you only know what's already happened, and moving into a world where it's almost like a zero trust in the inbox. We don't trust the email, even if we don't see any indication of compromise. We really want to know who's behind it and what's the intention, all the context, the contextual elements that are really missing with the legacy solution. This was allow us to catch the fish that they are missing. And again, if you look at the data, the number is on our website, we can show that in 30 days, for every 100 mailboxes, we will catch around 67 emails, real phishing emails.
That makes sense. I believe that because I get so many phishing. I don't see as many of them now because I've just written real basic static filters for certain tags and things like that. But so this is going to learn more about the things that I'm doing.
About you, yeah. And same for the deepfake. It will learn, how you conduct on meetings, where you connect.
So so that is behavioral then. So that's
a lot of behavior. We're looking at the AI artifact. We're looking at language. We're looking at the video and the voice that are being generated. If we're talking about Phishing 3.0 for a second, we're looking at all these kind of things. But what makes us very, very unique is that we're looking at all the contextual elements as well.
That makes sense. Because I think about stuff I do, and probably 90% of it is very, almost static. It's not really static because now I'm emailing you or I'm emailing him, and but I'm the same person. So the things I'm doing. I like that idea. And what do you think the success rate is there? How effective is that?
So with VC, with the phishing 2.0 business email compromise, if they don't use an AI solution to try and mitigate that risk, these attacks are very successful. And again, evidently, we measure it by, again, I think the right way to measure it is how much money they're able to do at the end of the day.
Sense.
And it's very funny, and a lot of cybersecurity experts, they miss this point, but BC attacks, the scams that we were just talking about, the fake invoices and fake wires, companies are losing more money to that than a ransomware attack. And ransomware has all these kind of things around it. So it's a big problem that is growing even faster. Now when we move to phishing 3.0, we're even more concerned because, again, the continuous and persistent kind of nature of this attack, which is not just sending you an email and hoping for the best, or maybe sending a follow-up email to see if they can convince you anyway.
Right.
The use of other modalities, the fact that they can put someone that you know and trust in front of you asking you to do the same thing, this is where we believe we'll see an increase in their success rate.
And I think AI is enabling almost a it becomes almost continuous. They could send 50 things, and the 51st one is the one that gets through, and because they can automate this whole process, they can try to figure out where the chinks in the armor of all your defenses.
The thing with the AI now in phishing 3.0, that's it's becoming more agentic in nature. Okay. Which means we don't really need to tell the AI what to do. The AI can figure it by itself. I can tell him, hey, go and fish Doug, okay, and find the best way to do that. And the agent will be able to go and look for information about Doug, and will be able to do the ideation of, okay, based on what I've learned, this is how I think I can fish him, and then create the email. Okay, you can even create a fake landing page because it can code, and then it can run an attack end to end. And we believe that you have to fight fire with fire, which means if we fought phishing 2.0 and BC with AI, we have to fight phishing 3.0 with agentic AI.
Right.
So the future is very agentic. We see all the big kind of platform companies going into this kind of agentic world. We showed that, again, cyber criminals will adopt this type of technology as well. And we as Defender, we have to do that because it's all about being proactive. If you are reactive in tomorrow's, and even some will say today's, if you are reactive to what's happening out there, if you're sitting and waiting for the spear phishing email to happen, you already lost the battle. You have to be proactive, and in order to be proactive, you need to know how to deploy agents the right way to do all the proactive work.
All right. Well, to find out more about Iron Scales, please visit securityweekly.com/ironscalesrsac. Thanks, Al, for coming and joining us today. It was a real pleasure to get to talk to you. We will be here all day. Stick around, and we'll be back after this break with more live interviews from our SAC 2025 conference. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Welcome to RSAC Conference 2025. We're back recording live from the CyberRisk TV studio in Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Carl Vandenberg, Chief Marketing Officer at Illumio. Welcome, Carl.
Thanks, Mandy. Great to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you were here. And actually, right before we began, you mentioned something about a submarine.
Yes.
Can you go into that just real quickly?
So the team did a great job, by the way. In the Bay, there's a U.S. submarine. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that we wanted to get across in our value proposition, and a little bit for your audience about Illumio, originally the microsegmentation or network segmentation company. And so we want to get that across with an analogy. And one of the analogies that we found helpful is the submarine. So the idea of the submarine is that the way that submarine is structured is it's broken up into compartments or segments. And so if there's a breach at any part of the submarine, the water will only be contained in that particular segment. And so as a result, it won't sink. And it's the same thing with segmentation of your network or microsegmentation of your network. If a bad actor gets in, which inevitably they do, then you contain the problem by basically keeping them to a certain part of the network. So we thought that was a useful, fun, appropriate analogy to get that message across.
It's fantastic, and I feel like that brings together really becoming the cyber equivalent of an incredibly capable Titanic.
Yes.
So avoiding everything.
To avoid it, yes, yeah. And disasters, that is part of our
really our mission is to have a future without cyber disasters. And so the message that we're bringing to the market, and a little bit of context and maybe some data behind
Please.
kind of, how we're seeing the market. So the cybersecurity industry, for the last few decades has really focused on keeping bad guys out of the network, trying to stop breaches. And that's an admirable task and obviously something we need to continue to do. And we're spending hundreds of billions. I think the latest this year is maybe 350 billion on cyber security, right?
Okay.
No surprise given the size of RSAC, right? You can see how many vendors are here. The challenge is, in spite of that spend, and it's increasing every year, the cost of cybercrime is continuing to grow every year. In fact, Forrester, I think, estimates $12 trillion the cost of cybercrime in 2025. And so we're spending more money, and the problem is getting worse. So something's wrong. And the thing that's wrong is that whereas trying to stop bad guys is absolutely necessary, it's not sufficient. We've got to, once they breach, once they get in, we've got to contain the problem. And so we're about breach containment. And we can talk more about how we do that and why that's important and kind of the steps to take. But that's really the core message. We want to get to the market. We've got to focus on containing the problem, on stopping the spread, not just trying to stop the attack.
Excellent. And now let's pretend we did not just have those wonderful sentences.
Yes.
And I want to ask a question.
Yes.
So when you're discussing a post-breach world,
Yes.
for people who are not familiar with Illumio, are you discussing that, the events immediately after something has actually been breached? Or are you going so grand as to say, no breaches will ever happen again?
No, it's the former. So
Okay.
it is, we believe, in fact, breaches are inevitable.
Yes.
And like the data proves that, as I said, cost of cybercrime keeps going up. We ran a survey and a report a couple of years ago, refresh it, like breaches are happening like every few seconds. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense. I mean, these cyber criminals are getting more and more sophisticated. And as I said to my team, and I've said this, it's kind of ironic in the world of artificial intelligence. The weak link is real intelligence, is human intelligence, because most hackers get in through social engineering.
Absolutely.
That's how they land. So in other words, humans are the weak link. So it doesn't matter how sophisticated your AI tools are, you're never gonna, unless you implant an Elon Musk chip in your brain, maybe you can get as smart as a computer. But the human is the weak link. And therefore, breaches will happen. And it's more and more common because of the complexity of the infrastructure. So
not just that, but also the rise of AI and being able to create such hyper-realistic phishing campaigns, the deep fakes,
absolutely, yeah. It's impossible. Personally, I fell victim to it last year, and I thought, I'll never do it, but it happened.
Right.
And so that's the reality that we're dealing with. When you say post-breach, you just got to assume that the breach has already happened. And so it's about what do you do after the breach has happened? And that's the focus on containment, on containing the problem before it becomes a disaster.
So what more on that? Why do you believe that our security teams are struggling to keep up? Can you identify a couple of things?
So one of the things, and we'll talk a little bit about an underlying technology that we use and a number of other vendors like Wiz and SentinelOne use, is the graph, right? And the importance of the security graph. And so the thing about there is John Lambert, who's a distinguished engineer at the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center, has a quote which says that defenders think in lists, attackers think in graphs. As long as that's true, attackers will win. In other words, we have lists or alerts or things that we need to go through as defenders to try and figure out what's going on in the system. Attackers don't think that way. They think they want to find a landing point, and then what's the sort of the network or the way that they can get to the valuable assets, right? They're looking at the world in a very different way. Unless we change that paradigm, we're going to be stuck. And so what we have underlying our technology is the security graph. Mm-hmm. And the Illumio AI security, and we'll talk about the AI component in a minute, but the AI security graph basically ingests all of your network flows. So this is kind of unique, is that a lot of the graphs out there are relationships or posture management.
You mean between assets or between?
Between assets,
Okay.
our relationships. But we actually ingest actual network flow.
Okay.
So the data that's flowing, the metadata of the data that's flowing, and we ingest that. That's like petabytes of data a day into our graph. And it allows you to understand the full network complexity of your hybrid cloud, because we go across multiple clouds and also
Okay.
your data center. And with that, you can identify attack patterns and paths that are otherwise impossible to, because it's like a multi-step process, and we can see the whole thing. And so the use of graphs, and we've just got a book that was published by Chase Cunningham that came out about the, he's Dr. Zero Trust. I don't know if you know Chase Cunningham. He's an influencer in the Zero Trust world.
Okay.
And he just published a book about the importance of thinking and defending using graphs. So I'll stop there for a minute. We could talk a little bit more about the AI component and how we
Yes.
leverage that. But that's, I think, the using graphs is an important part of how we change the game on the attackers.
Now let's go back to AI-enabled security graph. Do
Yes.
you mean that on your side you're actually just using assistive AI with your teams, or how else is it enabled
Yeah, how
through
is
security
it?
graph?
So really the way it's very practical, as you know, we talked about off air before we started recording here, is that there's a lot of AI washing out there. Everything is AI, right? True. I mean, it's kind of cropping up everywhere, but where's it really valuable? Where it's really valuable is like taking a lot of the grunt work out, especially at scale. So, you know, we have a very large customer that's got tens of millions of workloads across their cloud. And we just ingest that data and we use AI and ML to auto-label all of those flows.
Okay.
And they're dynamic, right? It's changing all the time. So it would be impossible, even if you had an army of people, to like keep up with what's going on. But AI, through pattern matching, heuristics, you know, prior data, best guesses, all of these things, can automatically label all of this. So it becomes intelligible. And then on top of that, you run, again, like you put in threat intelligence, you put in malicious IP data, right? You get all of this. And then you can start using AI to run heuristics or analysis across all of that data. And you get, it identifies the problems for you. That otherwise would just be impossible to identify as a human. So it's the auto labeling, right? It's the scale of it. It's because it's constantly changing. It's very transient to be able to do that, all that in near real time. And then running analytics on these huge workloads of data and coming back with, here are the top 3 things, problems that you've got in your environment.
So do you view that as simple automation for the security team?
Yeah, like it's basically, and as you know, one of the challenges of the SOC or the security team is they're just overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely.
They-
Inundated,
They,
yes.
they just don't know what to do, right? And so it's I think it really is, this is for me, the power of AI and ML is just taking a lot of the workload off. In some cases, as I said, it allows us to do things that would be otherwise impossible.
Right.
But, and in a lot of other cases, just automating, right, in an intelligent way that so that the analysts can do their job because they're kind of struggling to keep up.
And what is the concept of connect the dots?
Yeah, so the connected dots is back to the graph.
It is, okay.
It is. It's basically, you can see, you know, I did this fun thing. Well, it kind of didn't work, but the intention was good at our sales kickoff to get the idea of the graph across to because we've had the graph technology in our product for like a decade.
Yes.
So it's not like new, but we're surfacing it now through through this AI CDR, Illumio Insights. So cloud detection and response product, which we launched, which really our customers came to us and asked and said, hey, you're sitting on all of this rich, you know, network data. We want to see it in basically in dashboards. And so what I did to the team was to kind of connect the dots to get that idea across, was I had them all at SKO. It was like 600 people, 700 people in the room. And I had them put an LED on their light, on their head, certain seats. And, you know, at their seat level, you look around, you just see these red lights, right? But then when you zoom back, we had a camera on the ceiling, looked down, and it spelled out crap. Actually, we were trying make it like crap. Unfortunately, now everyone picked up the light, so it didn't quite work. But
Again,
the idea
human
was
error. We're going back to social engineering and human being a weak
So it
link.
didn't quite follow instructions. But the point is that so they couldn't see it, but when you had a perspective,
Right.
you could connect those dots and see there was a problem.
Excellent. So having that, I think many of us think about the 20,000-foot view. Or I
Yes.
think a lot of us who tend toward IT and security, we have big picture thinking. We think top down no matter what.
Yeah.
So what excites you about being able to use the AI-enabled security graph even more? And what is something you've seen it help your customers with that you didn't intend?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what we're seeing is, because originally we worked with more of the blue team, on the segmentation piece, where it's a kind of a segmentation is one of those things that if you do it, and it's really one of the pillars of the zero trust strategy. If you do segmentation right, you're going to be golden, right? As I said, you get breach or you get an attacker come in, they can't go anywhere. But it takes a lot of work to get there. And so we wanted to find a way to enable that to move faster. And so when we brought in the security graph, it allowed more teams outside of just the blue team. So the SOC came in, the threat hunters, the red team came in, and they were able to use all of this data, because it's kind of real time. So you can see breaches in real time. You can also see potential attack paths or risks of attack paths. So essentially we found it kind of brought a lot of the teams together that weren't necessarily talking to each other around a kind of common view.
Wow. So going back to, it's funny, I had a conversation with my Pi AI agent the other day about what is the fundamental aspects for the most successful cybersecurity team.
Yes.
The number one that it brought up was still communication.
Yes.
So enabling that level of communication is it is what we all need. It is what us weak humans still require.
And we also, the thing is that what we find is the graph is the powerful thing about a graph is that it mimics how humans think. We think in graphs. We don't even realize it. Like a map is a graph, right? Obviously, our social network is a graph. These are all graphs, part of our daily lives. We don't even realize that we operate and think with graphs. And so it's natural for us, for example, when there is a workload that is affected, we see it, right? You want to see, okay, what else is it attached to? So you're actually looking for the graph, that all the things it's connected to. And we show you visually, you can just zoom in and you can see everything that it's connected to, like physically connected to through the network. And so it really responds to the natural way humans think and how they would solve for a problem or try and contain the damage.
What a masterful use of data. So Carl, thank you so much for being here
It's
with
been great.
us. Good.
Thank you, Mandy.
You're so very welcome. To find out more about Illumio, please visit securityweekly.com/Illumio RSAC. For all RSAC 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. Thank you again, Carl.
Thank you,
This
Mandy.
has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
And please stick around. We'll be back right after this short break with more interviews live from RSAC Conference 2025.
It's the RSAC Conference 2025, and we are back here recording live from Cyber Risk TV studio in Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. They finally straightened me out on it. No more East. I've got it all now, at least until tomorrow, when I'll forget it all again. I'm Doug White, and joining me for this interview is Tony Anscombe. He's the Chief Security Evangelist. My favorite title, Chief Security Evangelist at ESET. Hi, Tony.
Hey, hello, Doug. I wanted to be the Chief Evangelist Officer, but our CEO somehow didn't like the acronym.
You can still do it.
I think so too.
No, I like that. I always wanted to be an evangelist. I think that would be. I could go around shouting and encouraging. I was more in the get your money kind of, but yeah, we shouldn't go there probably.
I always think of the Phil Collins music video from the 80s. There's one for you to look up.
Yeah, no, I'm sure I've seen that one. Well, so we were talking before, and straight up was ransomware. That was the first thing that we started talking about. And I've not heard, I don't think I've ever had a call from somebody going, ransomware, we got that, and we're covered. We're not worried about it at all, because it's so prevalent. And even if they act like that, it's usually just, somebody saying, this is our official position, don't criticize that. So you fill us in. What's going on with ransomware?
Well, certainly this year, the start of this year, I mean, you've seen some interesting numbers coming out. So Chad Alessi said there's been a dip in the amount of payments to ransomware cybercrime groups. And it was a significant dip. I mean, it was like 30%. So, are we winning that battle, or is $800 million going to ransomware groups even close to winning? And I think I err on that side of caution of, what we're seeing is leveling. And I put that down to a number of reasons, because if you ask the insurance industry, the cyber insurance industry, the demands are going down. So I could put that down to cyber criminals are working out what insurers are willing to pay and what companies are willing to pay, asking for the right amount, and that's what we're seeing across the blockchain.
I mean, I've seen that with various things where it seemed to me like the demands, I mean, like a lot of things, if I call you up and I ransomware you and I say, I want $100 million, and you go, we're like a chain of car washes in Kansas, and you can't pay. So I start learning, right? And I go, and I realize if I ask you, and I mean, even insurance notwithstanding, I start learning if I ask for $5,000, maybe I make a lot of money. I can be a volume discounter, right? It can be Crazy Al's ransomware kind of thing.
Well, it's not, and ransomware is an interesting term in itself, isn't it? Because we assume there's software, which is the last part of the word.
Right.
But think about, there's an incident with PowerSchool. I don't know whether you watched that one at the start of the year, where there was no encryption, there was no disruption. It was just data exfiltration.
Yeah.
And there's no malware that actually happens now. It's just the theft of data, and they turn and say, you don't want us to publish it, you need to pay us.
Yeah.
And of course how then do you really trust that they delete it if you do pay?
I don't.
No, I don't either, but some people seem to.
And I don't even know how they could prove that. And I would be very reluctant to pay them if they're saying, we'll promise we won't give this back.
Well, so that's an interesting one. We sit on one side of the fence as cyber defenders.
Right.
Yeah. Now, if you're running a cyber crime group or a ransomware as a service group, you also need to have a reputation that you do provide encryptors, that you don't publish data if somebody's paid, because you need trust so that the next customer you go and get, and I called it a customer, that's the wrong word, victim, victim you go get.
We're already turning it into an industry, like the customer.
But it is an industry, and that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, as you said, we were talking beforehand, and you said some of them even have service.
It's normalized. I mean, I was reading about, these guys were calling the customer service lines for some of these people, and they were talking about how great the customer service was, and how it was so much better than other companies they had dealt with. And I'm like, okay, wait. I mean, but it was like ransomware as a service industry. And you're right. I completely agree. That's all about reputation, because if you are even an overarching ransomware as a service provider, your reputation is everything, because if people don't trust you, honor among thieves.
Yeah. And we published some research recently from the ESET research team, which I think was quite interesting because it looked at some of the business model. So you may remember Lockbit got taken out of play last year by law enforcement, but Ransom Hub appeared pretty much immediately behind it.
Yeah.
So as you see one group disappear, another group reappears. And what we need to remember is this is a channel business. And when I say that, you have the ransomware as a service group, and they have underneath them affiliates. Right. And then under that, you've got the access brokers who are getting access to networks. So this is a true channel business.
It's a vertically integrated industry.
Yeah, but Ransom Hub was interesting because they changed the business model. So what would happen beforehand was you'd pay the ransomware as a service group. So somebody would get the access, work out the data would be exfiltrated, they'd deploy the malware or not, And then as a victim, if you're going to pay, you pay the ransomware as a service group, and then they pay
They disperse
down
the
the
funds,
channel.
yeah.
Ransom Hub switched the model. Now, that was on the back of, I think, the Change Healthcare attack at the start of last year. Do you remember when the affiliate didn't get paid?
I do. It
Right.
caused chaos.
And I
yeah.
think as a trust thing, Ransom Hub started and flipped the model so the affiliate gets paid and then has to pay the ransomware as a service group. So it shows that somebody's thinking about the business model and the trust.
Oh, they
and-
are. I mean, what you said earlier. What is the annual on this? Like a billion?
It's a little, it's a little under a billion.
I mean, you start talking about. There's plenty of industries that aren't in that space. So
Well,
I mean, there's
and
probably consultants for it now.
Yeah, and let's be clear, we're only talking about the ransomware piece that goes across the blockchain. That business email compromise and the other scams. And
Oh yeah.
I mean, this
if
is
you add all that in there, it's
this
like
is-
unbelievable.
yeah, ransomware is scratching the surface.
I mean, it's seriously organized crime that is, I don't know. I mean, it's to me very unstoppable in some ways. I mean, obviously there's things you could do to backstop it, but I mean, where do you think that's going? Because obviously companies aren't going to put up with this forever. I mean, just or maybe they will. I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll just say this is just the cost of doing business. It's like paying for pilferage. We just budget for it and move on.
Well, the good thing is I think companies are improving cybersecurity posture.
Okay.
And I think that's because now this is actually viewed as a business risk. I think it's viewed less of as a cyber risk,
That makes a difference.
but as a business
Yeah.
and financial risk. Because you lose reputation, you lose financial, you lose revenue, etc. You might have to report to a regulator, you might get fined. So now this is a boardroom financial risk, and you're seeing companies. I already mentioned insurance. You're seeing companies insure against that risk. You've got the SEC requiring you to file if you've got
Right, if
an
you
incident
get-
of this
yeah,
nature.
to let your
so
shareholders know.
This is now a boardroom issue.
Yeah.
And I think that's changed cybersecurity posture significantly because it's changed the ability to get budgets and.
I mean,
so you can protect
the minute
against
the
this.
word business risk gets involved, it becomes part of a different group,
Right.
and we start looking at it differently. And like I mentioned, when you can get underwriting for it, do you think that we need more regulation to force those kind of disclosures, or does that not help?
I think I think disclosures need to come together under a single regulator. I mean, if you think here, you've got critical infrastructure reporting requirements to CISA. The FDIC requires you to report. The SEC requires you to report. If you're in here in California, you'd have to report to the CCPA, and there's so many of these different.
It's getting kind of noisy.
And that's why people also then bring in outside teams to look after this. But it's you ask the question of can you protect and what should where the businesses? Yeah, of course you can. There's a lot of great advanced technologies. I mean, at ESET we have MDR, XDR.
Yeah.
So looking at those threats that aren't malware related, but the anomalies in traffic, the incursions, etc.
I mean, you seem to see advances in that area to try and sort of tamp down on this, which is good. It's just I worry about it because it's a very insidious kind of crime that's very easy to implement in any organization.
It is, but there's other things that you need to do as well. Of a lot of employee training. If we look at a lot of these crimes, it typically starts with social engineering against an individual of very different forms sometimes.
And identity management, I mean, which has been one of the big threats to that as well.
Yeah. We're sitting here with an SC award on the table, and that we won that last night.
No, you
which
did.
is
I
great
was there.
for ransomware remediation.
Yeah.
So
That's why I wanted to talk to you about
ransomware.
ransomware remediation because, you have an award.
We do, and a winner's award. I'm very proud of that.
I bet.
Yeah.
I didn't get an award. Thank you very much. You know who you are. What are you going to do? I could take yours, though.
Oh, Doug, we can share it. Come on.
Can we really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll share it with you.
yay.
And by the way, it's not my award. It's our company
okay.
award.
Oh, I thought it was
But
going to
yeah,
become
that's-
your award.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, congratulations, though. That's impressive. I mean, it's great to get a chance to talk to you about that. But back to that whole ransomware thing. What are some things like I could do right now? I mean, as an organization to start. I mean, everybody's all over the place in this. From what I've seen, I've got companies that are going, we don't know. I got companies that are going, we spend millions, stopping this. So what are some steps I should be taking right now as like a CISO?
Well, so I would say most companies or a lot of big enterprise companies have already gone down the XDR route, put up a SOC, and they've got security analysts, et cetera, et cetera. The companies that would concern me is in that mid-tier, because they probably don't have the resources. They're not going to put up their own SOC, et cetera, and they need to go down a managed detection and response route so that they're leveraging the expertise on the outside of the organization.
Okay.
And there's an interesting part of that as well of you need to make sure your resilience plan also doesn't solely rely on external resource. So imagine if you had an incident, or imagine if there was a cat incident that really hit a lot of businesses. You might think you've got some contract with an incident response team now,
right?
But if there was a true cat incident, they might not turn up for the next 2 weeks.
Because you're really low priority.
Well, and who knows? The government might actually take control and push them to critical infrastructure first.
I've tried. I used to do a lot of like DRP stuff, and I know it's not called that anymore. Now it's called BCP or whatever. But back then it was called DRP. We said it like it was. And I've tried to get people to move a little more into that kind of space, which had the same problems. Right. Because we had large companies, that were spending money on it, putting together physical SOCs and all these things, and had response teams and whatever. And you had these mid-tier companies that had nothing. And you're asking them the same questions. What about when a hurricane strikes and your entire mainframe center is under 5 feet of water? What's your first? The way I did it was, what's your first call? And the CISO says, I would call Steven. And I'm like, call Steven right now. And they're like, does anybody have Steven's number? And somebody goes, he retired 2 years ago, sir. And you're like, okay, see, you're not prepared. And so I think we need to move that into that space a little bit. I mean, is that where you're going with that?
Well, yeah, I think companies need to make sure their resilience plans are good. They need to make sure that their instant response and forensics and all those that post-incident issue people that will come in, you need to have some of that skill set internally, or you need to be able to run your business without them turning up. So your plan needs to be business resilient as well as cyber resilient. But those mid-tier companies, I'd strongly recommend considering using managed services for the advanced detection, because having a security analyst sat there that does this day in, day out, the human expertise that sits behind the screen is really what you need. And let's be clear, everybody at somewhere like here at RSA is talking about AI and automation and that's great. But at the end of it, we need human expertise to actually investigate.
Somebody has to ride herd on that stuff. If the AI can shift you from the role I had on the mainframe of being responsible for everything to that analyst role where I'm not having to deal with every last detail, that really improves my posture. But you have to be able to do that.
Well, the AI is a tool, isn't it? So by the time the incident hits the analyst, the incident should already be furnished with the data the analyst needs to understand the incident. That's the automation that AI brings to this.
Exactly.
And where that automation sets in. But we're still reliant on human expertise.
I agree. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. I think it can change in this shifting paradigm. But I did want to ask you, though, before we run out of time. So you did win the award.
We did.
And it's for ransomware remediation. Can you tell us could you give us more details?
Well, so ransomware remediation is a new feature we've just built in. So imagine when we see a suspicious process on a device, we can actually automatically recover the file if the ransomware has touched the file. So it's automatic recovery on the device. Now, there are some operating system utilities that claim to do this, but of course, if you're a bad guy, the first thing you're going to do is go and modify and change the operating system. So this is proprietary technology that does it, that we've built ourselves.
Okay, and what's the product called? Does it have a specific name?
It's part of our
It's just part of the overall suite. Okay, I didn't know if it was a
product.
specific thing that was there that people could look for, but it's just the overall ESET suite.
Yes, it's part of our standard product.
Okay, that's cool. Well, if you want to find out more about ESET, Visit ESET.com to learn more about the company's cutting-edge ransomware solutions, threat intelligence, and broader cybersecurity portfolio. For all your RSAC 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. Thank you, Tony Anscombe, for coming in. It was so much fun. I wish we could talk for a lot longer because it was quite interesting. We do have more interviews coming today. We never sleep. We'll be back. You stick around, and we'll see you in a little bit.